The underground club's strobe lights cut through the smoke like knives, and I was on my feet serving drinks for the 11th hour straight. My vision swam, black spots dancing at the edges as I balanced another tray of champagne glasses worth more than my rent. The bass thundered through my chest, mixing with the dizzying scent of expensive cologne and something darker I couldn't quite place. Power. Danger. The kind of wealth that came with blood on it. I was invisible here too, just another server weaving through the bodies of people who spent more on bottle service than I made in a month. My legs trembled. I'd worked a double shift at the diner before this, barely grabbing a protein bar between jobs. Mama's treatment had gotten more expensive. The new medication her oncologist prescribed wasn't covered by insurance, and my 3 jobs were still somehow not enough. Girl, watch where you're going. A woman in a dress that cost more than my car shoved past me, her elbow catching my ribs. The tray tilted. My hands shot out to steady it, but the world tilted instead. The VIP lounge. I'd been delivering bottles there all night and had successfully avoided making eye contact with any of the men who occupied those velvet couches like kings on thrones. I'd seen him, though. Impossible not to. Silas Vane moved through the club like he owned it, because he did, along with half the city's underground. Always surrounded by men who spoke in codes, their jackets concealing the shape of weapons I pretended not to notice. I'd learned to make myself smaller, quieter, fading into the background like wallpaper when his dark eyes swept the room. But tonight, something was different. The air in the VIP section felt heavier, suffocating, thick with cigarette smoke and tension that made my skin prickle. The security had doubled. Voices were lower, sharper. And as I approached with another bottle of $1,000 whiskey, those whiskey-colored eyes locked onto me for the first time in 3 months. My heart stuttered. The room spun. Then the floor rushed up to meet me, and the last thing I felt was arms like steel catching me mid-fall, and a voice like smooth smoke murmuring something that sounded almost like a promise. I woke to silk. Not the scratchy polyester of my studio apartment, but real silk that whispered against my skin like a secret. My head pounded as I forced my eyes open, squinting against sunlight that poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. This wasn't a hospital. This wasn't anywhere I recognized. The bedroom was enormous, decorated in shades of cream and gold that probably cost more than my yearly salary. A chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, each crystal catching the morning light. I sat up slowly, my body aching in that hollow way that comes from pushing too hard for too long. Someone had changed my clothes. I was wearing an oversized white shirt that smelled like cedar and something masculine, definitely not mine. Panic fluttered in my chest as I slid out of bed, my bare feet sinking into carpet so plush it felt like walking on clouds. The door wasn't locked. That surprised me. I eased it open and stepped into a hallway that seemed to stretch forever in both directions, lined with artwork that belonged in museums and doors I didn't dare open. I counted 12 security cameras just in this wing alone, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. Each one tracked my movement as I walked, a silent reminder that nothing here went unnoticed. Voices drifted up from somewhere below, male voices speaking in clipped sentences I couldn't quite make out. Numbers. Names I didn't recognize. The cadence of people conducting business they didn't want recorded. A man in a black suit rounded the corner and stopped when he saw me. His hand moved instinctively toward his jacket, where I knew a gun was hidden. We stared at each other for 3 long seconds before he spoke into a radio I hadn't noticed. She's awake. North Wing, 2nd floor. I need to leave, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. I have work, I need to. Mr. Vane will see you in his office. It wasn't a suggestion. The man gestured toward a grand staircase that spiraled down into what looked like a marble foyer. This way. My legs moved on autopilot, carrying me downstairs that probably cost more than my mother's entire house. The estate revealed itself in pieces. More cameras, more men in suits speaking in codes, hallways that branched into wings I couldn't even begin to map. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress disguised as a mansion, and I was trapped inside it. The man stopped at a set of double doors made of dark wood, carved with patterns that looked almost like vines or veins, something organic turned decorative. He knocked twice, then pushed them open without waiting for an answer. Silas Vane sat behind a desk the size of my bed, and when his eyes met mine, I understood with absolute certainty that I wasn't leaving this golden cage until he decided to let me go. He didn't stand when I entered, didn't smile or offer reassurance. He simply watched me with those whiskey-colored eyes, assessing me the way someone might examine a piece of art they'd just acquired. The silence stretched between us like a blade. "Sit," he said finally, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. My feet carried me forward even though every instinct screamed to run. I perched on the edge of the seat, spine straight, hands folded in my lap. 3 months of making myself invisible hadn't prepared me for being seen. "I need to go home," I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. "I have work tonight, and my mother, she needs. I've taken care of it." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Your manager at the club has been informed you won't be returning. Your other employers as well." The air left my lungs. "You can't just." "I can." 2 words, flat and final. And I have. Anger flared hot in my chest, cutting through the fear. "You have no right." I collapsed. "That's it. Send me to a hospital, send me home, but you can't keep me here like some kind of pet." His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Property? Is that what you think this is?" "I don't know what this is." My hands clenched into fists. "You're the man everyone's afraid of. The one whose name people don't say out loud. And now I'm in your house and you've fired me from my jobs and I don't understand why." Silas stood then, moving around the desk with that predatory grace I'd noticed in the club. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. This close, I could see the faint scar along his jawline, the flecks of gold in his irises, the way his tailored suit couldn't quite hide the danger coiled beneath. "You've been working in my club for 3 months, he said softly, moving through my space like a ghost. "Do you know how many people I employ? How many faces pass through my world every single day?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "Hundreds. Thousands." He reached out and I flinched, but he only tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was almost gentle. "Almost. And I never noticed you. Not once. Until you fell." "I don't understand." "Neither do I." His hand dropped away, but he didn't step back. "But when I caught you, when I felt you go limp in my arms, something shifted. And now I can't stop seeing you. Can't stop thinking about the way you tried to disappear. The way you survived in the shadows of my world." "So you're keeping me here because you finally noticed I exist?" "No, Lyra." My name in his mouth felt like a brand. "I'm keeping you here because now that I've noticed, I'm not willing to look away. What's mine stays mine. And you." His thumb traced my jawline, tilting my face up. "You became mine the moment I decided you were worth catching." Dinner was served in a dining room that could have hosted 30 people. Instead, it was just the 2 of us at opposite ends of a table that stretched like a dark lake between us. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across china, so delicate I was afraid to touch it, and wine that probably cost more than a month of Mama's medication sat in a glass I hadn't asked for. I picked at the food, my stomach too twisted with anxiety to actually eat. Silas watched me with the same unsettling intensity he'd had in his office, as if he were memorizing every small movement, cataloging every nervous gesture. "You're not eating," he observed, lifting his wine glass. "I'm not hungry. You collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition." He said it like a fact, not an accusation. "Eat." My jaw tightened. "I'm fine." "You're many things, Lyra. Fine isn't one of them." He took a sip of wine, then set the glass down with more force than necessary. The base caught the edge of his plate, and the glass tipped, spilling deep red wine across the white tablecloth and onto the Persian rug beneath. The sound that escaped my throat was involuntary, a sharp intake of breath. My body moved on instinct, chair scraping back as I stood. I'll get something to clean it, I can. Sit down. I froze halfway to standing, my hands already reaching for my napkin. The wine spread across the rug like blood, seeping into threads that were probably handwoven by artisans centuries ago. A rug worth more than everything I owned combined, now stained because of carelessness. The rug. Sit. Down. His voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. My legs gave out and I sat, more from shock than obedience. Silas stood, moving around the table with deliberate slowness. He stopped beside my chair, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "What were you going to do?" he asked. "Get on your knees and scrub?" Heat flooded my cheeks. "It's wine. If it sets. I don't care about the rug." He pulled my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor, and held out his hand. "Come with me." I stared at his outstretched hand like it was a trap. Because it was. Everything about this man was a trap, beautiful and deadly and impossible to escape. But I took his hand anyway, letting him pull me to my feet and lead me back through the hallways to his office. He guided me behind the massive mahogany desk and pressed me down into his leather chair. The one he'd been sitting in hours earlier when he'd told me I belonged to him. "What are you doing?" I asked, bewildered. Silas braced his hands on the armrests, caging me in. "Teaching you something important." His face was inches from mine, close enough that I could smell the wine on his breath, the cedar scent of his cologne. "You're not here to clean my messes. You're not here to make yourself small or invisible or useful in the ways you've learned to survive. Then what am I here for? To sit in chairs you think you don't deserve. To eat food you're too anxious to taste. To stop flinching every time something valuable breaks." His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. "You're here to learn that you're worth more than the things you can fix." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The weight of his words settled over me like a physical thing, heavy and impossible. "The rug will be replaced," he said softly. "They always are. But you? You can't be replaced. Not anymore." I didn't sleep that night. How could I, knowing that Mama was alone in Philadelphia with no way to reach me, that bills were piling up, that the medications she needed would run out in days. Silas's words echoed in my head. "You're worth more than the things you can fix," but worth didn't pay for chemotherapy. Worth didn't keep my mother alive. At dawn, I found myself back in his office. I'd meant to slip out, to find someone who could tell me where my phone was, how I could call home. Instead, I found Silas already at his desk, papers spread before him, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that made him look almost human. He glanced up when I entered, no surprise in his expression. As if he'd been expecting me. "Can't sleep in a gilded cage?" he asked, setting down whatever document he'd been reviewing. "I need my phone." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "My mother doesn't know where I am. She'll be worried. She knows you're safe." He removed his glasses, folding them with precise movements. "I had someone call the hospital. They informed her you were taking time off for health reasons." "The hospital." My stomach dropped. "How did you?" "I know everything about you, Lyra." He opened a folder on his desk, and even from across the room, I could see my life laid out in documents. Lyra Belcastro, 23. 3 jobs, none of them paying enough. Studio apartment in the worst part of the city. Mother, Angela Belcastro, stage 4 pancreatic cancer at Philadelphia General. Medical debt currently at $247,000 and climbing. Each word hit like a physical blow. Heat crawled up my neck, shame and anger warring in my chest. "You had no right." "I had every right the moment you became mine." He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace. "Did you really think I'd let you stay here without knowing who you are? What you need?" "I don't need anything from you." "Liar." He stopped in front of me, close enough to touch. "You need everything. Money for treatments. Time you don't have. Options that disappeared the moment the bills started coming." His hand lifted, fingers ghosting along my jaw. "I can give you all of it." My breath caught. "What?" "Your mother's debt." every cent cleared by morning. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I hated how my body responded, how my pulse quickened despite the danger radiating from him. The best oncologists in the country. Experimental treatments. Whatever she needs to survive. It was too much. Too easy. Why would you do that? Because I want you here, focused on me, not drowning in debt and desperation. His eyes held mine, dark and consuming. Because every minute you spend worrying about money is a minute you're not fully present in this house. In my world. What do you want in return? The smile that curved his lips was slow, dangerous. You stay. No more talk of leaving, no more looking at the exits like a trapped animal. You accept that this is where you belong now. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. And when I call for you, you come. When I want you beside me at dinner, at meetings, at events where men need to see that what's mine stays mine, you don't hesitate. You want to own me. I already own you, Lyra. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. I'm simply offering to pay the price your freedom was already going to cost. My mother's face flashed through my mind. The gray pallor of her skin, the way her hands shook from the pain medication, the quiet resignation in her voice when she told me not to worry. $247,000. Her life, measured in a number I could never reach. If I say yes, I whispered, there's no going back, is there? No. His honesty was brutal. But your mother lives. That's the bargain. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I'd already made my choice. Do it. 3 days passed in a blur of silk sheets and meals I couldn't taste. True to his word, Silas had cleared my mother's debt by noon the next day. I'd spoken to her on the phone, heard the disbelief in her voice when the hospital called to confirm that her balance was zero. She'd cried. I'd lied and told her a charity had helped, that everything would be okay now. I didn't tell her the price I'd paid. Silas gave me space during those first days, though I felt his presence everywhere. The clothes that appeared in my closet, expensive and perfectly sized. The books on the nightstand chosen specifically for me. The way the staff moved around me with careful deference, as if I were something fragile that belonged to him. On the third night, I couldn't sleep. The bedroom felt too large, too quiet, and I found myself wandering the hallways in bare feet and borrowed silk. The house was different at night, shadows pooling in corners where the security lights didn't reach. I counted the cameras out of habit, a nervous tick I couldn't break. Raised voices stopped me outside Silas's office. Not shouting, but the kind of controlled anger that was somehow worse. I should have turned around, gone back to my room, but something kept me frozen in the hallway. You're being reckless. A man's voice, rough and unfamiliar. The Corsinis won't let this slide. The Corsinis don't dictate how I run my business. Silas's voice was cold, flat. The kind of cold that preceded violence. This isn't business, it's a statement. You took their shipment, their route, and their buyer in one night. That's a declaration of war. Good. Let them come. A pause. Then, and the girl? What happens to her when they come for you? My heart stopped. The girl. Me. They won't touch her. The certainty in Silas's voice was absolute, terrifying. Anyone who tries won't live long enough to regret it. You're putting a target on her back just by keeping her here. Is she worth that? Worth starting a war over? The silence stretched so long I thought they'd stop talking. Then I heard movement, the scrape of a chair, footsteps moving toward the door. Panic flooded through me and I backed away, but not fast enough. The door opened and a man in his 50s emerged, stopping short when he saw me. His eyes widened, then narrowed, assessing. Behind him, Silas appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Lyra. Not a question. A statement. He'd known I was there. I couldn't sleep, I said, hating how guilty I sounded. I didn't mean to. Come here. The older man stepped aside, and I had no choice but to move forward, into the office where maps and photographs covered the desk. I tried not to look at them, but I caught glimpses anyway. Shipping manifests. Warehouse locations. faces marked with red X's. "This is Marco," Silas said, closing the door behind me. "My oldest friend and worst critic." "Marco, this is Lyra." Marco's expression didn't soften. "The one you're willing to start a war over?" "Yes." No hesitation. No shame. My breath caught. What war? What did I hear? Silas moved to his desk, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. He offered one to Marco, who took it with a grunt, then turned to face me. "The truth. Which is that my world is dangerous, and you're in it now whether you're ready or not. The Corsinis are a problem I've been meaning to address for months. You're not the cause, Lyra. You're just the catalyst." He moved closer, and in the lamplight, I could see the predator beneath the polish. "They'll come for what's mine. They always do. And I'll remind them why my name is the one people don't say out loud." Marco drained his glass. "You're a fool, Silas." "Perhaps." Silas's eyes never left mine. "But she stays." The weight of what I'd walked into settled over me like a shroud. This wasn't just a golden cage. It was a fortress preparing for siege, and I was standing right in the center of it. The call came 4 days later, shattering the fragile peace I'd built inside these walls. I was in the library, a room I discovered that morning filled with books that actually looked red rather than decorative, when one of Silas's men appeared in the doorway. "Miss Belcastro, you have a visitor." My stomach dropped. "A visitor?" "Here. Downstairs. Mr. Vane is with him now." "Him. Not her. Not my mother." Dread crawled up my spine as I followed the guard down the grand staircase, through hallways I'd started to memorize, to a sitting room I'd never entered before. And there, standing between 2 of Silas's men like a rat caught in a trap, was Danny Greco, my ex-boyfriend. The man I'd left behind in Philadelphia when I came to this city chasing work. "Lyra." His voice cracked when he saw me, and I noticed immediately how wrong he looked. Thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that set my teeth on edge. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days." Silas stood by the fireplace, perfectly still, perfectly dangerous. His eyes tracked every micro-expression on my face, reading me like one of his contracts. "Danny." I kept my voice neutral, though my heart hammered. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you. To warn you." He tried to step toward me, but the guards shifted, blocking him. He flinched, eyes darting to them before returning to me. "You disappeared. No one knew where you went. Your mom said you were taking time off, but you never just take time off, Lyra. You work yourself to death." "I'm fine. You shouldn't have come. You don't understand." His voice dropped, urgent and afraid. "There are people looking for you. Bad people. They came to your old apartment, asking questions. They know you're connected to him." His eyes flicked to Silas with barely concealed fear. The air in the room changed. Silas moved away from the fireplace with predatory grace, and suddenly he was beside me, his hand settling possessively on the small of my back. "Connected," Silas repeated softly. "Interesting word choice. Tell me, Danny, who exactly is looking for my Lyra?" "I don't know their names." "They didn't give names." Danny's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "But they had guns. Nice suits. They said if I found her, if I knew where she was, I should tell them. That they'd make it worth my while." Ice flooded my veins. "You didn't?" "No. God, no. I'd never." But his eyes couldn't quite meet mine, and I saw the truth in the way his hands shook. He'd told someone. Maybe not everything, but enough. Silas saw it too. His fingers tightened against my back, not painful, but claiming. "How did you find this address, Danny?" I asked around. People talk. Someone said they saw her getting into a car outside the club that night. The words tumbled out faster now, defensive. I was worried. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. "How thoughtful." Silas's voice could have frozen hell. "And in your concern, did you happen to mention this address to anyone else? The men in nice suits, perhaps?" Danny's silence was answer enough. "Get him out of my house," Silas said quietly, and the guards moved immediately, grabbing Danny's arms. And find out who he talked to. Every name. Every detail. Lyra, please, Danny's voice rose in panic as they dragged him toward the door. You should have stayed in Philadelphia, I said, and meant it. Because now his blood would be on my hands too, another stain I couldn't scrub clean. The door closed behind him, and Silas turned to me with eyes like winter. Your past just became our present problem. The dress appeared on my bed 2 days after Danny's visit. Black silk that looked like liquid night, with a neckline that plunged just enough to be daring without being obscene. A velvet box sat beside it, containing diamond earrings that caught the light like captured stars. I knew what this meant before Silas appeared in my doorway. We're going out, he said, leaning against the frame with casual elegance. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than my old car, tailored so perfectly it looked like a second skin. There's a charity gala tonight. The kind where the city's elite pretend to care about the less fortunate while making deals in corners. You want me to go with you? Not a question. I want them to see you with me. His eyes traveled over me, assessing. The Corsinis will be there. They're allies. Every rival who's been watching, waiting to see if I've grown soft. He pushed off the doorframe, moving into the room. I need them to understand that touching you means war. My throat tightened. You're using me as bait. I'm using you as a declaration. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. They already know you're here. Danny made sure of that. Now I'm going to make sure they know exactly what you are to me. And what am I to you? His hand lifted, fingers trailing along my jawline. Mine, unequivocally, irrevocably. His thumb traced my lower lip. And anyone who forgets that will learn why my enemies tend to disappear. The ballroom was a cathedral of old money, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers that threw fractured light across designer gowns and tuxedos. I'd never been to anything like this, had only seen places like this when I was scrubbing their floors. Now I walked through it on Silas Vane's arm, and every eye in the room tracked our entrance. Whispers followed us like shadows. I felt naked despite the dress, exposed in a way that had nothing to do with skin. Silas's hand rested possessively on the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd with the confidence of a man who owned the room simply by entering it. Silas. A man in his 60s approached, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. I heard rumors you'd taken up with someone new. I see they weren't exaggerated. Luca. Silas's voice was cordial, but I felt the tension in his hand against my back. Lyra, this is Luca Corsini. He owns half the shipping routes on the eastern seaboard. The enemy. The one Marco had warned about. My smile felt like glass on my face. A pleasure, Luca said, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Such a pretty thing. I do hope Silas is keeping you safe. This city can be dangerous for those who draw the wrong kind of attention. Is that a threat, Luca? Silas's voice dropped several degrees. An observation. Luca's smile didn't reach his eyes. Beautiful things have a way of getting broken when powerful men fight over them. Silas moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was beside me, the next he had Luca by the arm, gripped tight enough to make the older man wince. To anyone watching, it looked like a friendly gesture, but I saw the violence coiled beneath it. Let me be clear, Silas said softly, his voice carrying only to the three of us. She's not a thing to be broken. She's not a pawn in whatever game you think we're playing. She's mine, and if you or anyone in your organization so much as looks at her wrong, I'll burn every shipping route you have to the ground and salt the earth where they stood. Luca's jaw tightened. You'd start a war over a girl? I'd end a dynasty over her. Silas released him, smoothing the man's jacket with a predator's grace. Don't test me. As we walked away, my heart hammered so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Silas's hand never left my back, steadying me even as I felt the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation about the girl who'd made Silas Vane willing to burn the city down. Now they know, he murmured against my ear. You're not just mine. You're untouchable. They came for us 3 nights later. I woke to gunfire. The sharp crack of it cut through the silence of the estate like thunder, and for a moment I lay frozen in silk sheets, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. Then the bedroom door burst open and one of Silas's guards appeared, weapon drawn. Miss Belcastro. With me. Now. My body moved on instinct, feet hitting the floor as another round of gunfire echoed from somewhere below. The guard grabbed my arm, pulling me into the hallway where two more men waited, their faces grim and focused. The security cameras I'd counted so carefully all those weeks ago were dark, blinking red like dying stars. What's happening? My voice sounded distant, unreal. Corsini's. They breached the east gate. The guard pushed me toward a door I'd never noticed before, hidden in the wall paneling. There's a safe room. You'll be. The window at the end of the hallway exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly snow, and then there were men pouring through, dressed in black with guns raised. The guard in front of me went down first, blood blooming across his chest. I screamed, stumbling backward as the world descended into chaos. Someone grabbed me from behind. Not one of Silas's men. This grip was wrong, too rough, fingers digging into my arms hard enough to bruise. Hot breath against my ear, a voice I didn't recognize. Got her. Package secured. Package. They were talking about me like cargo, like one of those shipping manifests I'd seen on Silas's desk. Terror flooded through me as they dragged me toward the broken window, and I fought, kicking and clawing with everything I had. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. The kind of measured pace that came from absolute certainty. And then his voice, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Let her go, Silas. But not the Silas I knew from dinners and careful words. This was something else entirely. Something that made the man holding me go rigid with fear. The emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in red. And there he was at the end of the hallway, shirt torn and blood on his knuckles, eyes like winter death. He moved like a dark storm given human form, and in his hand was a gun that looked almost casual, as if violence was simply another language he spoke fluently. Last chance, he said softly. The man holding me made his mistake. He swung his weapon toward Silas, and that's when I learned what lethal really meant. Silas moved. 3 shots, so fast they sounded like one continuous roar. The man behind me dropped, his grip releasing as he fell. 2 more men appeared in the hallway, and Silas took them down with the same cold efficiency. No wasted movement, no hesitation. It was brutal. It was terrifying. It was undeniably attractive in the most dangerous way possible. He reached me in seconds, hands on my face, checking me for injuries with touch that was almost gentle despite the violence still humming through him. Are you hurt? I couldn't speak. Could only shake my head as my body started to shake, adrenaline crashing through me like a wave. Good. He pulled me against his chest, and I could feel his heart hammering, the only sign that he wasn't completely inhuman. I need you to stay with me, Lyra. Can you do that? I nodded against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of gunpowder and cedar. Marco, Silas called out, and the older man appeared from the shadows, weapon drawn. Get her to the safe room. Lock it down. No one gets through that door but me. What about you? I found my voice finally, pulling back to look at him. His smile was sharp, predatory. I'm going to remind the Corsinis why they should have stayed in their lane. He cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. Wait for me. This won't take long. Then he was gone, moving back into the darkness with that same terrifying grace, and I understood with absolute clarity that Silas Vane wasn't just a man who controlled the city's underground. He was the monster they told stories about to keep people in line. And he'd just gone to war for me. The safe room was silent except for the sound of my breathing and the distant echo of gunfire that eventually stopped. Marco stood by the reinforced door, weapon ready, his expression unreadable. I sat on the leather couch that probably cost more than I used to make in a year and waited. It felt like hours before the door opened. Silas stepped through, blood on his shirt that I knew wasn't his, exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. But when he saw me, something in his expression softened. "It's done," he said simply. Marco nodded and left without a word, closing the door behind him. Suddenly we were alone in the aftermath, and I couldn't stop staring at the man who'd just dismantled an attack on his fortress like it was merely an inconvenience. "The Corsinis?" I asked. "Won't be a problem anymore." He moved to the bar in the corner, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey with steady hands. "Luca is dead. His lieutenants scattered. The ones who came here tonight won't be going back." He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. And the strangest part was that I wasn't horrified. I should have been. The girl I was 3 months ago, scrubbing floors and making herself invisible, would have been terrified. But that girl was gone. "I could have died tonight," I said, accepting the glass he offered. "But you didn't." He sat beside me, close enough that our thighs touched. "Because I won't let that happen. Ever. You can't promise that. You can't control everything. Watch me." The certainty in his voice was absolute, terrifying, intoxicating. "I told you that you were mine, Lyra. I meant it. Everything I have, everything I am, exists to keep what's mine safe." I took a sip of whiskey, letting the burn ground me. "I'm not the same person who collapsed in your club." "No." His eyes held mine. "You're not. That girl was invisible by choice. Hiding. Surviving." His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. "You're not hiding anymore." He was right. Somewhere between the golden cage and the dark bargain, between watching him spill wine without caring and seeing him kill to protect me, I'd stopped disappearing into walls. I'd stopped flinching at expensive things breaking. I'd stopped believing I didn't deserve to sit in chairs meant for people more important than me. "I want to know everything," I said, surprising myself. "How your world works. Who your allies are. What threats are still out there." I turned to face him fully. "If I'm going to be yours, if I'm going to live in this fortress, then I refuse to be just a pretty thing you keep behind locked doors. I want to be part of it." Something sparked in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or satisfaction. "You're asking to sit at the table. I'm demanding it." My voice was steady, certain. "You said I was worth more than the things I could fix. Prove it. Let me be more than just yours. Let me be your partner." Silas studied me for a long moment, and I saw the calculation behind his gaze, weighing risks and benefits. Then he smiled, slow and dangerous and beautiful. "All right, Lyra Belcastro." He lifted our joined hands, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "Welcome to the Empire. But understand this, once you step into this world fully, there's no going back to innocence. No returning to the girl who scrubbed floors." "Good." I met his gaze without flinching. Because she was never really me anyway. She was just what I had to be to survive. I leaned closer, feeling the shift between us, the power dynamic finally finding its balance. Now I get to choose who I become. And who do you choose to be? I thought about the journey from invisible server to claimed possession to this moment, sitting in a safe room after surviving an assassination attempt, holding hands with the most dangerous man in the city. And I realized I'd already made my choice the moment I stopped seeing the cameras as threats and started seeing them as protection. The moment I stopped counting exits and started claiming space. "Yours," I said finally. "But on my own terms. Not because I'm trapped, but because I choose this fortress. This world. You." Silas pulled me onto his lap, and when he kissed me, it tasted like whiskey and power and the kind of belonging I'd spent my whole life searching for in all the wrong places. "Then welcome home," he murmured against my lips. "My partner. My equal. Mine." And for the first time since I woke up in silk sheets, I believed him.